Welcome, learner, to our subject of today, research, consultancy, and advisory. We are looking at underlying theories, models of research, consultancy, and advisory. And our focus today in the lesson will be on social systems theory, which falls under selected research and consultancy theories. The social systems theory has been used extensively in social sciences, and the social systems theory is also called or referred to as systems theory. This social systems theory has its conceptual origins in social systems theory and can be traced to the 19th century, to the work of a philosopher, Herbert Spencer, and Emile Durkheim. They extensively looked at social systems, and the social systems theory is the study of society as a complex arrangement of elements, including individuals and their beliefs, as they relate to the whole. That is very critical as it relates to the whole. And in terms of the whole, this refers to a country, an organization, an entity, or a corporation. And specifically when it comes to social systems, when it comes to a company, then the company as a whole is an entity or an organization. And inside that particular organization, according to the social systems theory, there are subsystems within that particular organization. And those systems, the way they relate to each other, they contribute to defining what the whole system is. And when it comes to a country, then within a country, there are systems within a country. Within a country, there are organizations, and those organizations, under the beliefs of those people within that particular country, individuals, they define what that particular country is. In the social systems theory, we are going to look at the basic assumptions of social systems theory. Basic assumptions of the social systems theory. And there are four assumptions that underlie or underpin this theory. And the first basic assumption is that there is an underlying general order in the world. So one, there is an underlying general order in the world. So this system assumes or makes an assumption that generally there is the aspect of order when it comes to things, the way things are done in the world. And that's the first basic assumption of the social systems theory. The second assumption of the second basic assumption of the social systems theory is that social ordering is a consistent and dynamic process. Social ordering is a consistent and dynamic process. What this implies is that when it comes to any society, whichever way the society is structured, or whichever way an organization is structured, there will be dynamics in terms of how order is maintained and sustained in terms of that particular working organization or that particular entity. Then the third aspect is that, the third assumption is that all human social behavior is purposive. All human social behavior is purposive. What this underlying assumption indicates is that any kind of behavior that is exhibited by an individual in a company, in a country, or in any system, whether it is a church, mention any group, that particular social behavior that is exhibited, it's purposive, or it has a purpose. It has a purpose. So that is the third basic underlying principle underpinning the social systems theory. Then the fourth one is that all forms of social organizations display self-responsibility. Self-responsibility, all forms of all forms of behavior reflect a form of responsibility or responsiveness. So all forms of behavior reflect a form of responsibility or a response. They display a response in terms of the characteristics. So these are the four assumptions which underlie the social systems theory. So the proponents of this theory argue that there is an underlying general order in the world. Then two, social ordering is a consistent and dynamic process. They also argue or assume or underpin that all human social behavior has a purpose, and they argue that all forms of behavior reflect a form of responsibility or a form of response. Then when it comes to the social systems theory, there are certain components of the social system theory. Components of social systems theory. There are components or the characteristics of social system theory which define what the social system is. And these components are: you have an input within the system, you have a process in the system, you have output in the system, and there is a feedback loop from output to input, and then there is the environment within which that particular system operates. So the components of a social system can be seen in a display figure. It can be displayed such that you have a figure or a diagram that indicates the components of a social system. And within this particular social system, we have indicated that this social system will have input, or you can call them inputs. And these inputs as they come, you will have the inputs directed towards the process that they have to be processed within an organizational setting. So you have the processes, you can call them processes, and from processes, then you have outputs. So any system will have inputs, will have processes, and then there will be a loop. There will be a loop from outputs to inputs, which provides feedback. So from outputs, then you have feedback. So this is feedback. And when it comes to the feedback, then within that particular system, then you have the environment. And within that particular environment, there will be stakeholders. Within the environment, there will be stakeholders. And these particular stakeholders could, for example, be consumers. You have suppliers. You have, for example, government, among other members. So you have inputs, you have processes, you have outputs, you have feedback, and then you have environment within which the social system operates. And this is typical for any organization. If you are taking a company, for example, an organization that receives raw materials, these raw materials will be processed through processes. For example, if it is tea, for instance, it will be, for example, brought in as raw materials. It will undergo a process from the green leaf, maybe raw leaf and so on, to semi-processed outputs, which can now be dried. For example, tea leaves may be packaged. Then these ones are now, feedback is given to the output. And then when you have consumers, so from the outputs, the consumers will be there. Suppliers will also be interacting with this particular system and providing the inputs, like now you need energy, you need regulation by government, you need the price controls and so on. So these would form now the components of a social system that is continuously interacting with its environment to be able to provide goods, to be able to provide services within that particular working context. So the components or characteristics, components or characteristics of a system, of a social system, will include the things that will define a social system. Will include, we have indicated, one, you have the inputs. Two, you have processes. Three, you have outputs. Four, you have feedback. And then five, you have controls. Now, these controls can be brought in by, say, government. You could be an organization and you are operating maybe in the service sector, maybe tourism sector or manufacturing sector. So for you to be able to operate, there will be controls that are put in place by a government. There will be codes of ethics that are put in place by suppliers. You will also have consumers. Consumers will also have the bodies that are representing them in relation to the benefits or maybe the rights of consumers. So the system is in constant interaction with its environment. So when the feedback is provided that what has been produced is being accepted by consumers, then that particular system will basically continue working effectively. If the feedback is negative, then wherever the inputs are coming from, there'll be controls implemented to ensure that if consumers are complaining, if suppliers, for example, are not being paid, then it is important that that arrangement is made to ensure corrective measures are taken into consideration. Otherwise, if there are products being produced by a given company or by a given organization, if they don't meet the expectations of the environment, then those kind of products may not be readily acceptable in the market. So those are the components or the characteristics of a social system as envisaged in the social systems theory. And we have indicated you have inputs, you have processes, you have outputs, you have feedback, and then you have controls. So one may ask, so what are the applications of the social systems theory? Applications of the social systems theory. How can the social systems theory be applied, or of what use is the social system? Now, the way the social system has been put forward by its proponents, a social system looks at a system as being more important than the subsystems. So one, the whole is more important than the subsystem. So when it comes to operations within a given work environment or organization, it is important to note that there will be different sections within a particular system or components. But when it comes to the issue of preferences in terms of choices, what should be done, then the outputs or the processes or the components have to ensure, or the players within the system have to ensure that the players as subsystems are not more important than the whole system. So the whole system and its requirements take precedent when it comes to structuring of events and activities. It is also important to note that those making decisions should be aware that the environment within which a system operates is important. So the environment influences how organizations operate. Environments influence how organizations operate. Let us take an example. You have an organization that is in the manufacturing sector. Now, government and government agencies, for example, you have NEMA. If an organization is manufacturing, it is expected to comply to the regulations that have been set by government and its agencies like NEMA. So if that organization does not comply, then that organization may suffer consequences. So the social systems theory try to explain that as organizations operate, those organizations must be sensitive to the environment. The same thing with Kenya Bureau of Standards. So if an organization is operating, then it has to meet the quality mark. If that organization does not meet the quality mark, then that particular organization may suffer in the market, and customers may not be very confident in, or consumers may not be very confident in patronizing the products of that particular organization. So that's another area where the social systems theory underpins or informs decisions within the area of organization operations. Then it's also important to note that another area of application of the social systems theory is that organizational structures should be designed to be adaptive to changes. Organizational structures should be designed to be adaptive to changes. What is noted widely is that change is the only thing that is permanent. So as organizational structures are designed, it is important to be informed by the social systems theory that change will come. So organizational structures should be designed in terms of how they relate to different functions, with that particular understanding that when change comes, this particular structure is flexible enough, can be adaptive to the changes that are anticipated within a given working context. Then it's also important to note that another area or use of the social systems theory is that subsystems have to be aligned to support the main systems. Subsystems should be aligned. Subsystems should be aligned to support the main system. The main system. So if you have a country, we have given an example that an organization or a country could be now the main system or the main organization. So the way subsystems are designed, they should be aligned to support the main system so that the main system can be able to function and function effectively. Then it is important to ensure that the principles and concepts should be designed to be broadly applicable. Principles and concepts should be designed to be broadly applicable applicable. So when it comes to organizational settings, if concepts or systems are designed within an organization, those systems should not be designed for just specific functions. Those systems and underlying principles within systems should be designed in such a way that because systems relate to each other, principles and concepts should be designed to ensure that they can be broadly applicable within the context of operational organizations and so on. Then it is also important to ensure that when it comes to the social systems theory, every system is bounded by space and time. Every system is bounded by space and time. Every system is bounded by space and time. So at any one given event, if the system is supposed to receive, for example, input, then that particular system that is receiving input, that input is expected to come at a particular setting. And that bounding in terms of time may affect the operations of another system. So the issue of space and time should ensure that the way the systems are working, they are properly synchronized, so that if you have the receiving point, you have the processing point, you have the output point, you have the feedback time, then those systems must be interconnected and interrelated to work effectively as the case might be. Then it is also important that to note that the social system is consistent with the systems thinking approach. The social systems thinking, social systems theory is consistent with systems thinking. Social systems theory is consistent with the systems thinking. So basically what this implies is that in any given organization, it is important that though you have subsystems, you have sections in a department, you have processes like input, processing, outputs, and others. It is important to ensure that for effectiveness of performance of organizations, there must be one approach for the whole organization. So the whole organization must look at issues holistically. Whatever decision that is being taken, the decision has to be taken in the context of the entire organization. So these are some of the areas where application of social systems theory can be able to be applied in management and other operational areas. So in our lesson today, Lana, we have looked at social systems theory as one of the selected theories in the area of research and consultancy. And we have seen that social systems theory is also called systems theory, and it was conceptualized in the 19th century, and it is attributed to philosopher Herbert Spencer and Emil Durkheim, who was a sociologist. And we have seen that the systems theory is the study of society, and it looks at society as a complex arrangement of elements that include individuals and their beliefs, what they believe in, as they relate to the whole. And we have seen that when it comes to the whole, it could be a corporation, it could be a country, it could be a county government, for example, it could be an entity like a church or maybe any other social organization. And we have gone ahead to see some of the basic assumptions of social systems theory, where we have looked at the 4 assumptions. And the assumption 1 is that there is an underlying general order in the world. That is an assumption of the social systems theory. Number 2, social ordering is a consistent and dynamic process. To put things in order, it has to be done consistently, and the process is dynamic. Number 3, the third basic assumption is that all social behavior is purposive. Any behavior that is in an organization, in a work environment, in a group, it has a purpose. Then 4, all forms of behavior reflect a form of responsibility or responsiveness. Then we have gone ahead and looked at the components of social systems theory, where we have looked at inputs, processes, outputs, and we have looked at the feedback loop. And we have also discussed that the social systems theory operates within an environment, and this environment may include stakeholders like consumers, suppliers, government and government agencies, and the components and characteristics of a social system. We have mentioned them as inputs, processes, outputs, feedback, and controls within the system. And then we have also gone ahead, Lana, and looked at the applications of the social systems theory, where we have looked at 7 of the applications where the social system theory can be applied. And we have indicated that number 1, that the social system looks at the whole, indicates that the whole is more important than the subsystem. There will be subsystems within an organization, but when it comes to the degree of importance, then the whole should be looked at as more important and than the subsystem. Then number 2, environments influence how organizations operate, and we gave an illustration and indicated an organization in the operating in the production setting should be aware that the environment, for example, government and government agencies or suppliers or consumers may have an impact on what the organization does. Hence, it is important that organizations become sensitive to their environments. Then thirdly, organizational structures should be designed to be adaptive to change. So this social systems theory can inform those designing organizational structures, so that the organizational structures are designed with an element of flexibility, so that they are flexible and they can be able to operate and adapt to changes. Then 4, subsystems should be aligned to support the main systems. So the subsystem exists for the purpose of supporting the main. So if it is in a government setting, for example, government agencies and government operational areas must be able to support what the entire government is doing. When it comes to a company, the departments and the sections within a company should ensure they are moving towards the realization of the organizational vision. That is how the social systems theory can inform decisions at that level. Then principles, number 5, principles and concepts should be designed so that they are broadly applicable. There should be no principles or concepts that are designed in an organization. If you are designing, say, a system within an organization, then that system should be strong enough and versatile enough to be able to be applied within the organization to achieve the greater goals of that particular organization. Then number 6, every system is bounded by space and time. Whatever system that an organization has, whether it is an open system or a closed system, then that system is bounded by space and time. For example, you may have inputs by a particular time, processes must take place by a particular time, outputs must take place. So if you are receiving raw materials, the system of receiving raw materials should be conditioned to the operational cycle of maybe the operational machines, so that if the machines are, for example, uptaking, then that uptaking of raw materials should be done at a particular time. Processes must be, for example, started. Then you have the outputs in relation to the issue of space and time, so that the systems are well synchronized. Number 7, where the social systems theory can also be applied. Social systems theory is consistent with the systems thinking, where the whole organization is supposed to think as one. So decision-making processes must be synchronized so that the organization is able to operate from one point of command. So that is your social systems theory in relation to selected research and consultancy theories in our lesson that we have completed. And before we finalize the lesson, there is an assignment that you need to work on to be able to consolidate your knowledge in the area of theories as they are applied in relation to the social systems theory. And The assignment is examine the application of the social systems theory of the social systems theory, social systems theory in management. So, learner, your assignment for today's lesson: examine the application of the social systems theory in management. Thank you very much for being attentive in our lesson today.